With few exceptions, most players who are willing to do some table talk during a hand are going to do so when they're comfortable and when they're feeling strong. That's not always the case. Some people have, as I said, like mastered the art of like chit chat while they're bluffing and they feel comfortable doing so. And some people actually just end up feeling more comfortable when they talk a lot. But for most players, if you see something like this, we call it the speech. If you see the speech before the all in, like something like this, for example. Well, I got to get home to dinner anyway. It's late. I'm all in. Okay? Or something to the effect of, I just don't feel like playing anymore. Let's go all in. Or, well, this hand is as good as any. I might as well go all in. All three of those things are the speech, if you will. And the speech is usually downplaying the strength of the hand by sort of deflecting and saying, well, I've got to do dinner, so that's the reason I'm going all in. Or I'm not really that strong, but might as well. So most often when people are willing to say something like this or talk, you should be aware of that speech. Now, again, this is something that a lot of players are going to counter, and they'll do the speech and reverse it on you. But more often than not, if you see a random, especially an amateur player, pull the speech all in play, you better get away from your hand. One of the other points in a poker hand where you're going to be giving away information is when you choose to actually make a bet. And there's a lot of ways that you'll see players do that. Sometimes you'll see a player take chips and they'll just splash them in the pot. That same player other times may decide to just gently put them in this way. And often, if you pay attention to this sort of thing, you'll develop patterns or you'll see patterns in terms of which one is stronger and which one is weaker. Now, one of the things I look for occasionally is when someone's splashing their chips, I'm watching the elbow, and when an elbow extends all the way and stretches, that's essentially a subconscious tell to you to say, listen, get away, I'm very strong, run. Whereas that same player, if they, instead of fully extending the elbow, they put the chips down this way and don't extend the elbow, that's them being more inviting. So why would they be more inviting? Because they want you to call. Why would they be more aggressive with their arm? Because they want you out. So that tells you that's weaker than this. I mean, there's also things that you probably don't even realize that you do occasionally when you're betting. So say, for example, I'm in a hand against you right there. So I'm going to bet these 4 chips. And instead of betting them towards you, I bet them over here. What would that signify to you? Now, what that means typically is that's a weaker hand. They don't even have the guts essentially to look you in the face and make the bet. So often a misdirection bet that goes away from the body into a sort of another player is kind of them sort of hiding still because they don't necessarily want to bring attention to themselves. They don't want to look straight at you. So look for the direction of the bet. Now, this isn't always going to be true, okay? So what you want to do when you're looking for tells is you want to look for anything different. If you see a player who normally bets straight up all the time and all of a sudden, bets to the side, make sure you pay attention to what hand they turn over. Was that one a bluff? And then you log that in your mental calculator of possible tells that you could exploit later in the tournament. So let's say you're in a situation now where you're against me on the river, okay? And so I've already bet my river bet, and the action's on you. And you look at me and you tell me which one of the two sort of ways of being that I'm presenting is the bluff and which one is a very strong hand, okay? So the first one looks like this. All right, you got that? Okay, so it's either that one or this next one. This is the second one. Okay, so did you notice anything different between the first one and the second one? And if so, what did you notice? So if you notice that in the second one, I was breathing much heavier and it was out of control, you could see my shirt moving, you could see my jacket moving, that's usually a sign of stress, right? So I'm in a situation where I'm in a big pot and I'm nervous about it. Well, typically, if I had a very strong hand or was very comfortable with the situation, I wouldn't be nervous. So I'd be comfortable. I don't really care what you do because I know I'm going to win this pot. However, if I make this bet and I'm hoping you bluff, I may be under pressure, and a lot of players' tendency might be to bluff more heavily. Now, this isn't going to always be true about every player, just like any of these things. There's no always and there's no never. Some people simply in a big pot breathe more heavily either way. But generally speaking, and we want to think in terms of generally speaking and look at likelihoods of what something means rather than absolutes. And in this case, when someone's breathing more heavily after making a big bet on the river, they're far more likely to be bluffing than have the nuts. So if you play poker and you don't want to give away any added information, then you don't want to have any sort of ancillary things hanging out of your mouth, whether it's a toothpick, whether it's a cigarette, or chewing gum. Because when you're chewing gum, you're going to do some things subtly that may become pattern-like, and other players are going to pick up on it. So for example, there was a hand from the World Series of Poker that I was playing one time, and I'd watch this player because I was paying attention like I'm supposed to, in a big pot where he ran a big bluff on the river. He was chewing gum the whole way, you know. Then all of a sudden on the river, he made the big bet. No more gum chewing. I was like, okay, I'm very interested to see what this hand was, okay? Luckily, the player called. I was able to see it was a complete bluff. Now, later, on the third day of the event, when there was a lot of money riding on the line, I was up against the same player, and it was a similar situation where this time I was the player against him. He bet the river, made that same sort of, and then stopped chewing, and I called him and he was bluffing again. And the reason I was able to use this correlation is because I was watching every single time, not only when he was bluffing, but also when he had it. And when he had it, he seemed to just chew right along like there was no problem. So he would chew real comfortably, bet, kept chewing. I'd see many, many hands where he turned over a really good hand. The only time that I ever saw him chew and stop was when he was nervous and bluffing. So this is how you sort of incorporate through all kinds of data, sort of a game plan against these people that you're going to use against them later. And again, one example is not usually enough. In this case, it happened to be because I had that example of when he was bluffing, plus the correlation of all the other times that he wasn't, and he did the opposite thing. So as I was saying about limit hold'em, which I think is a lot more tell-based. There's a lot more body language that's given off because people are usually a lot more comfortable. They're not facing big bets, so they're a lot more relaxed. So that player, you know, who when you go to grab their chips, they do this, like they're ready to go to war with you. Often they're giving you a reverse tell. They're really sort of flexing their chest and be like, oh yeah, you want to bet at me? I'm just going to fold. That's the truth. They're trying to present a very powerful front because they don't want you to bet, and they're doing a reverse tell. So you've got to be cognizant of all these things that we're talking about, that the human being can adapt. So we talked a little bit about protecting your cards. So sometimes maybe, you know, a really smart adept player will have a very strong hand and do this on purpose, right? You have to pay attention to these things and always be looking for the true, genuine tells and the fake ones designed to deceive you. I'm going to give you an example of one that I used many years ago while I was playing on high-stakes poker against a gentleman by the name of Freddie Deeb. And as it turned out, we were on set, and there's some bright lights. So, and I have always had this issue with blinking, so I was blinking a lot. And there was a pot where I bet $50,000 in real cash, 2 bricks, threw it into the pot. Freddie stared me down. I was doing one of these because I was having a fit. And he called, and I was bluffing and lost the pot. So probably for the next year and a half, assuming, you know, I was playing against people who I knew watched the show, every time I had the nuts where I had 4 of a kind or aces, I gave it the old this. And people saw that as a bluff because I was basically taking advantage and doing a reverse tell based on what I thought people would fall for.